Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we go week to week breaking down a streaming favorite. In this particular episode, a delayed conversation and recap of the first two episodes of Cape Fear, this high-profile and heavily advertised new adaptation on Apple TV+, or I guess just Apple TV now. Joining me for the conversation later, after my solo recap, is Sona, who will be covering this show week to week with me for the remainder of the series. A 10-episode run, surprisingly long for a relatively short novel adaptation, which of course has been already adapted 2 times into film form, very notably. Oh, and of course, The Simpsons have almost beat-for-beat remake of the Scorsese 1991 film adaptation. So perhaps the one that most younger folks are most familiar with, that Simpsons adaptation. In every single case, we have the original score, this bombastic Bernard Herrmann score, which sounds like a Hitchcock film, by the way. The 1962 adaptation, storyboarded by some of the folks who work with Hitchcock, very much designed initially to feel like a Hitchcock film, although not directed by Hitchcock, and using Bernard Herrmann doing the score, famously a collaborator with Hitchcock as well. Ironically, it feels a little bit like a throwback. In 1962, when this film comes out, the first adaptation, based on a 1957 novel, Hitchcock has already made Psycho, so he is already starting to become a little edgier, although there's subtext there, of course, like there is in older Hitchcock films as well, of something worse, but not as overt as even Hitchcock had become at that period of time. Nearly 30 years later, the story is adapted yet again by Martin Scorsese, produced by his friend Steven Spielberg for Spielberg's production company. Scorsese at that period of time, coming off of a rough stretch in his career, he'd become very sick. He had lost faith to a large extent in his capacity of making films within the studio system. Raging Bull had been nominated for Best Picture, but had disappointed at the box office given its high budget. And New York, previous to that, had also flopped. He made The King of Comedy, another very expensive flop, and then came back in 2 ways. One, in making a very low-budget indie After Hours, and then making The Color of Money, the Academy Award nominated and winning Disney studio hit. And he was able to thread that needle where he made The Last Temptation of Christ on a relatively small budget, relatively successful despite all the controversy, especially on home video, and then makes Goodfellas, which is a hit in the theaters, develops a huge cult, reignites the fascination with his entire career. It's a hit for the studios, a massive hit on home video, and this is the first time that Scorsese gets to cash that check, making a popular and populist potboiler, but still has a lot of Scorsese's interests in it. This monster who has this chip on his shoulder that despite his crimes, he has been wronged, and this biblical judgment that he's going to put onto this idealized upper middle class family, Nick Nolte in the original version, and very memorably, the sexual threat that he represents in an actual really brutal sexual assault, maybe something that would not fly in today's day and age, and then using that, having that in the back of our minds as he starts to seduce the daughter of the couple. The cast, multiple Academy Award nominees here for in the Scorsese film, and a huge hit, by the way. A hit in the United States, massive hit overseas, over $200 million, well over $200 million. And this is in 1991, right? It's like a $500, $600 million movie today, if you adjust for inflation. And of course, from that point on, Scorsese had a really long, successful, nearly uninterrupted. I mean, he had dips, he had misses, but most of the time they were films that were really not going for a populist audience. And then he would balance it out by making something like The Departed, for example, this massive blockbuster that also wins Best Picture. So he's able to navigate that. And now, probably towards the end of his career, maybe only 1 or 2 more films to go. And one coming out just this Christmas, I believe, with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence. Another psychological thriller, by the way, bringing the conversation full circle. But that is that film. Now we have a new adaptation. This comes from Nick Antosca, produced by Scorsese and by Spielberg once again. And Antosca has most of the work I've seen of his are these series adaptations that are horror anthologies. And over time, he has shifted to mostly true crime adaptations, and he's gotten multiple Emmy nominations. The performers almost always get raves for his series. And he is not afraid to put genre leanings, even when he's doing a true crime adaptation. And as I mentioned, with the award nominations and good ratings, he's been pretty successful at this balancing act. Which brings us, of course, to this series, which in some ways feels like it could be a true crime story, and it intersects with the way true crime is actually in our culture at this moment, interestingly, but is not afraid to lean into the most garish and even gory aspects of this material, and honestly may turn off some of the audience that Apple might be trying to target. Antosca has mentioned that Scorsese told him to not be afraid to lean into the most over-the-top version of the story. Don't be afraid to do too much. And this paid off for Scorsese, by the way, where when you look at that 1991 film, he, of course, had graphic violence in his films up to that point, but nothing really leaned into this melodrama that feels almost like it is happening in some kind of interior headspace. It's as if the anxieties inside someone's mind have bled out into the real world, very intentionally so. So it was kind of out of step for Scorsese, and he didn't really lean into that style that much in the future. But that seems to be the tone, the main tone here in this series so far. A series, by the way, which I am really intrigued by and honestly enjoying very early in the going here, just 2 episodes in. If I'm wary of anything is, can they maintain this tone? Can they drag out the basics of this story for 10 episodes? Given how much is on the plate right now, I feel like, yes, they will be able to do that. But will it feel strained? Will it have diminishing returns over time? Because just the anxiety, just the horror elements of this story, that someone is in your house, just that home invasion element, which is honestly probably the most uncomfortable subgenre of horror, is that actual home invasion, something we never want to think about. Someone is living in our house, unbeknownst to us. And another honest, huge anxiety for me in films as well is when somebody is being gaslit or someone is just manipulating them overtly and no one believes them. Just kind of like everybody can see what's happening, but no one can actually do anything about it. And trying to get someone to pay attention to what you're saying is impossible or counterproductive. That is another anxiety that I have as well. And I think that, of course, it's something that's in the culture. Another thing new to this adaptation, I think that specific one, this tension of someone is targeting you and the systems around you can't protect you. I think that's something that runs through all of these adaptations. Plus, of course, like some kind of guilt, like, did I do something wrong? Or am I partially responsible for this punishment that's being doled out to me? Another anxiety that I think is universal. New to this adaptation is also this idea of how technology can provide a illusion of protection. We see multiple times that the security system seems to be glitching. It appears at one point very early on that someone's actually coming into the house, but because of the pixelation on the camera, they can't actually see who the person is. But they just see it as some kind of glitch on the camera, unaware at that moment that they might be under threat. So technology infiltrating our homes as well, another way, another vector at which something is in the home that we are unaware of or even relying on for a protection, only to discover it is a vector for manipulation. And of course, our anxiety as middle-aged people that our kids are being sucked into some kind of online wormhole, some kind of manipulation, some kind of catfishing, just yet another way, not only that they can get access to your home, get access to your online accounts, smear you in the public, like a podcaster here, yet another way that social media reaction to something now suddenly becomes yet another threat or another way to discredit you, but that someone can be targeting someone in your home and you can't do anything about it. And it's all happening via this technological vector. So that is a new aspect to the story and quite far afield of the themes of this story, the universal themes of this story going back decades now, almost 70 decades going back to the novel. almost 70 years, 7 decades, of the order of your family being disrupted by this chaos agent. What may work less well here is that chaos agent may be entering into an already chaotic family, and we saw that escalated in the 91 Scorsese film, right? That there was already issues with the marriage, already this rebelliousness of the teenage daughter. And now in this particular adaptation, even more chaotic agents potentially here in the story. So let's break this down in a little more detail before Sona joins the conversation. Episode 1 is called Fingers and Toes. Fingers and Toes. I'll see if I can get a Bardem accent going. What accent is this? We have Bardem's native Spanish accent overlaid with his attempt at a Southern accent. I actually think this works, especially when we find out his biography. If he was trying to do just an exclusively a Southern accent and trying to mask his Spanish accent, I think that would have been a disaster. But this kind of combination of both is intriguing and kind of speaks to his biography itself. As this episode begins, we are in this inverted photonegative image of Max Cady's eyes and this 4th of July celebration at the Bowden house in Savannah, Georgia. And this flourish of inverting the image here, like a photonegative version of this image, very evocatively that the blue water turns blood red. But this is actually from some of the technique Scorsese showed in his adaptation. So we're introduced to the family at this barbecue. It's the 4th of July, also referenced in the Scorsese film. Anna Bowden is a former defense attorney, now working for the Savannah Justice Initiative, some kind of, it's SJLP, not sure what those letters actually stand for. Savannah Judicial, something like that. But basically a Innocence Project type organization specific to the Savannah area. By the way, I'll be asking Sona about this. In a previous career, she worked with these type of organizations, the exoneration programs. So very curious to get her feel for how this felt. Obviously, incredibly heightened and probably fictionalized. Is it offensive? Is it accurate? Curious to get her take on all this. Anna Bowden, by the way, played by Amy Adams. Her husband, Tom, played by Patrick Wilson, New Jersey native. And we meet their children as well. Natalie is played by the actress Lily Callias. And their son, Zach, is played by Joe Anders. Immediately, we know something's wrong with Zach. He just seems out of it. He seems like he's like totally foggy-headed, maybe a chronic condition for teenagers, but from my experience as well, however. But what's kind of troubling here is as out of it as he seems, Tom mentions he's doing pretty well today. So if that's pretty well, a little concerning as to where he might be, his state of mind currently. From this happy family gathering, I think a storm is approaching, and we cut to somewhere else where the storm is hitting. And eventually we'll discover this is where Max Cady's ex-girlfriend is living. She has an earpiece in her ear, being goaded by somebody's voice. Even though they try to obscure the voice here, I'm pretty sure, given the accent, this has got to be Cady somehow communicating with her, maybe via Wi-Fi. He has a phone or some kind of device that he has gotten access to and is able to communicate with her. We look at the table there. First of all, there's like some Santeria imagery here. There's articles all over the wall. We kind of get like a quick rundown of the whole case against Cady, and even that the girlfriend was implicated in some of this as well. The whole the candles and this kind of possible teasing of Santeria or something like that is maybe my most troubling aspect of where this show might end up. We see on the table a gun. We see the knife, which turns out to be the actual murder weapon, which she is laying out here for as part of what she's doing this moment. She's actually scribbling out her confession. All of this, of course, to allow Cady to be exonerated. And grisly as this is, she shoots herself in the mouth. The bullet goes through her cheek. My wife, when they cut back to this scene later on, and she like spits out the tooth and blood is just pouring off of her face, my wife was like, my God, what are we watching? And I do worry that in a way, the show is announcing the show that it is going to be, but is it also potentially scaring off people who the anxieties I just described here are probably pretty universal themes among middle-class people, especially people who have something to lose, right? Going up against someone who feels like they have nothing to lose. And that's just as simple as the themes can be here. But we are putting things right into, like, we are on the fringe, if not overtly in horror territory early in this episode. And then before we cut back to the grisly payoff of that particular scene, very importantly, themes right out in the open, by the way, on this show. We have Tom looking around the backyard as the storm approaches, saying, I got to get a tree guy in here to take a look at this, because one bad storm and all these trees are going to come down and maybe take out the house even. So there's a little foreboding sign of storms to come. And of course, Anna also says, do you ever look around and think, do we deserve all of this ideal life that we have? Tom says no. But of course, they will be tested before this thing is all through many, many times. Of course, back to that payoff with the girlfriend. She's alive, blood pouring out of her face, coughing out a tooth. It's really disgusting. And finally, again, that voice in her ear telling her to do it, just do it. That's my girl. You're my girl, something to that extent. And she blows out her brains all over those newspaper clippings. And we get that title drop, Cape Fear. What a way to announce herself. And of course, immediately we know, we expected it anyway, Cady's going to be released. We see him just from behind this eye. We find out he has all these tattoos on his back of these eyes. Also like a Grim Reaper, some kind of death symbol as well. We see that later on, but we do see the one eye, the eye that sees from the back. And again, is this related to some of this other symbolism we've seen earlier, this Santeria, these type of props we've seen that might be related to this? Unknown at this point. A whole bunch of things happen here. We see that kind of setting the stage for where they are in their lives. Tom and Anna are being interviewed for some kind of profile. Anna's doing this to draw more attention to this social justice group. But the journalists, of course, are interested in apparently such a famous case, this Max Cady case, that you just feel it from Anna's reaction. She doesn't want to talk about it again. She's talked about it so many times. But in this particular case, they have a piece of news that they actually should know about. Max Cady is going to be released from prison. Anna doesn't find that out immediately, but it puts it on her radar at least. In the middle of this, some important details. Tom wanders off. You can see that there is something here. I mean, he does admire his wife, but there might be some kind of tension in the fact that they come at this from two very different perspectives. And the daughter's in the backyard as they're taking these photos, by the way, for this profile. Turns out that an entire family of skunks has turned up in the pool. Almost certainly not an accident. Somebody's placed them there. There's 4 of them, some kind of symbolism here. This family of skunks being judged by probably Max, or at least somebody working with Max. Question remains unanswered at this moment. I do love the details here, by the way, that Anna, as she's being interviewed, is continuously like, we're off the record now, right? We're off the record. Just reminding continuously what's on the record and what's off the record. Of course, it's her job. And it's maybe also had the experience in the past of being taken off the record or on the record for something she didn't want to say out loud, specifically about this case, considering how everything has turned out. Tom was the prosecutor on this case. She was the defense attorney. They ended up together. She was pregnant at the time of the trial itself. So there's a lot of shadiness about what happened during the case when she was defending Max. A great character here in the show is CCH Pounder, famously from the Law & Order shows and very recognizable for many other roles she's had as well. But so great to basically have her see the Max Cady case not as a negative, but as this exciting opportunity. Here's the most famous exoneration imaginable, exemplifying everything that's wrong with the judicial system potentially. And you were his defense attorney. What a great connection you have already. We have to get him involved in this fundraiser. So for her, all of this, Max suddenly entering the scene over the course of this episode and beyond, that it's such a great windfall for everybody. But we know that Anna has all this anxiety about what happened in the past and her culpability in some of these outcomes. Oh, I should outline that Max Cady was, in this particular case, in previous adaptations, went to jail for raping a teenager. In the series, he killed, or is accused of, killing his wife and their unborn child. So very different, and thematically very different as well. Instead of being this threat to the teenage daughter in all these previous adaptations, a sexual threat to that daughter, which may still end up being the case. I have a feeling no in this particular case, but we'll get around to that. But instead of that particular anxiety, in this case, it's the family that was stolen from him. Now, that might have been he who did that, but he is haunted by this family as well, his dead family. And of course, in counterpoint to this supposedly happy family, we start to discover over the course of this episode that Zach is very troubled, spends a lot of time playing video games, not surprising for someone his age. Angel X seems to be this girl that he games with all the time. But is it a girl? Who knows? It's on the internet. And there's a great scene where the dad tries to kind of commiserate with him, tries to get back on his side. He's talking about them going to a new school, considering he's having a lot of trouble at his current school. He was apparently leaked some photographs of his ex-girlfriend we discover over time. And then got distributed around the school, and he got into trouble for that. It ended the relationship, of course. And as is often the case, we've had similar cases like this in our region as well. And I'm sure everybody knows of similar cases where it can become a really toxic environment for the person who is involved with the case and for the person who is the victim of the images being leaked. So again, this really hit a nerve for me, just the fact that we have seen similar type incidents in our local area as well. So yet another kind of raw nerve that's being touched by this show. And maybe the highlight of Patrick Wilson's performance is when his son slaps himself, hearing this, that he might have to go to a new school and he doesn't want to go to the particular school they're talking about. And him just saying, like, don't hurt yourself. It's like this pain that he feels as a dad. He cannot reach his son. He cannot, and we all have that experience. As these kids get older, we lose the children they were, and they're still trying to navigate this. And we really can't just tell them it's all going to be good. We tell them that it's going to work out eventually. It's going to be okay eventually. But that's cold comfort, obviously. So very strong acting moment here for him. And after this awkward conversation, he goes and he's microdosing. So he's got his own escape. Everybody in the town, in this house, has their own way of dealing with these things. And in his case, he's microdosing. I don't know what this is. Is this microdosing acid? He takes it a lot. If this is microdosing acid, he's taking a lot of it. But I don't know. It could be ketamine. It could be THC. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out more over time. Apparently, the house is constantly under repair. And that's where he spends part of the time here. And you see that the window seems to be not fully sealed. So, you got a lot of alarm systems here, people, but you got to at least do the bare minimum of sealing up the windows. I guess they have to do that for the storms and such. So maybe the windows are sealed. Oh, and I should mention that he also gets a voicemail from a woman at this point. So if we rely on the 1991, if that's a possible corollary here, there is an affair going on in that particular film. So is this an affair or is this something else he's gotten himself embroiled in? But he's not returning the call. Oh, going back to that conversation earlier with Noah, Anna has to go to an event that night. They've exonerated this man, I forget his name, and who's living back with his mother again. And he is their highest profile case in the moment. They need him to speak at the gala the next day. They're having kind of a dry run, just kind of a small meet and greet to see how he does. He seems to be drinking too much. The mom seems to be warning her, I need to talk to you, that they're not getting along since he's come back home. So some warning signs that things may not be well at home. And of course, that will pay off. This is when the Bowdens find out that Max is free. Immediately, Anna starts thinking about the skunks. She starts thinking that he is coming to threaten us. And of course, they know things that we don't know, that Noah doesn't know, but we definitely don't even know here as viewers. There might be a reason he's coming back to knock on their doors. But Noah, of course, is pretty excited about this. That night when they get home, some strange things are happening. There seems to be some glitches with the security cameras. We see some kind of weird movement on the actual security. The door alarm goes off. So is there someone coming in and out of the house? Zach is in the kitchen. He has not gone to this event. And his sister calls out, well, how much money, how much food are you preparing here? Are you feeding a family up there? Famous last words maybe. And I think it's pretty clear at this point that just one of the many secrets that Zach might be keeping is that he has been allowing people to infiltrate the house. Also, the security system itself is probably exploited already. We see that even the digital picture frame kind of has a weird glitch when it moves from one image to the next. But not only is there this continuous sense of dread about what might be occurring, as they're talking in the kitchen. There's an implication that maybe somebody's listening on these devices, but there definitely is somebody else in the house. There's someone in Zach's room standing in a doorway, and a very chilling image. There's another alarm. The front door alarm goes off again, presumably this person leaving the house. That night, Zach is watching these creepy AI-generated video of this is what I would look like. At this age, I would have been Max Cady's son. Also, the wife's body partially eaten by alligators. The next day, they are preparing to go to this gala. Zach is missing. They mentioned the last time this happened, he had just gone down the street to play with his friends' video game. The sister goes to check on him. His friend mentions, we don't hang out anymore. He only hangs out with that girl online. How come the alarm didn't go off? There's another example of the door opened, he exited, but yet the alarm didn't notify them. The daughter's approached by a podcaster, a true crime podcaster, is fascinated by the Max Cady case. She happens to be walking with a big cup of coffee that she gets to throw at him, which he seems excited by. He's like, ooh, that's going to be great on Instagram. This is an effective scene, by the way, because for a while there, you're like, is this Max just surveilling the daughter? Which, of course, is what happens in the first film and as well in the second film, but really pronounced in the first film. On the way to the gala, in her gown, Anna stops by to check in on her key speaker, this recent exoneree. They can't get anyone to answer the phone. We see inside the house just some legs. It looks like these two folks are dead. Who killed them? Did they kill each other? Possibly. Did Cady kill him so that he can become more prominent? Possibly. Is it an acolyte of Cady's who's setting things up for him? Possibly. All remains to be seen. But they're headed to the gala. Before we get to the gala, we see that Zach is sitting on this yellow sofa. I'm very curious, did the doors not open or hear the door alarm going because Zach was still in the house? Was he just simply in another part of the house? Possible. I got to keep an eye out for this yellow sofa. And the second thing here is that he is experiencing some kind of fugue state or drug-induced, most likely, considering what we discover later on. He sees this image again of the boy who would have been Max Cady's son at this age. And here's my theory, by the way. We have seen multiple times a woman, perhaps a woman, who has appeared to Max very much later in this episode of the show, and also bumps into, I guess it's in episode 2 actually, and then bumps into Anna at the hospital. And I'm very curious, is this woman, A, is it a woman at all? Or B, is it, even if it is a woman, does it remind him in this moment, in this drugged out haze, of that video of Cady's would-be son, because there's a family connection? Because I have a theory that maybe Max has another child out there. Maybe that's who is assisting him. And that might be known to him. That might be unknown to him, actually, that it's someone working on his behalf, Cady, that is. But I think that's what we're seeing here. Most likely he is seeing either a son or a daughter. And in his drugged out, hazy vision of it, he's seeing them as this AI generated person because there's some similarity, right? If this is like a true representation potentially of what Cady's son might have looked like. And now we have someone approximately that age with approximately those features that it is blending in his mind somehow. But that's my guess. Cady has another relative out there, someone younger, around his age, around this age. And that is the person who probably infiltrated the house and or drugged Zach and took advantage. And then we're at the gala. We are more than halfway, way more than halfway into this episode. Noah says they're falling asleep. I don't know if the audience is falling asleep, but the head's getting blown off and hallucinations and who knows what's going on in the show at this point. But if the show was kind of off the rails for me, and by the way, not loving this episode personally up until this point, Noah gets off the stage, brings Anna up on the stage to rejuvenate the crowd. And this is when Max shows up. And this is Javier Bardem finally showing up in the show. And the show knows what it's doing. It's holding back. Eventually he shows up. And he doesn't show up as some cackling menace. Robert De Niro, incredible in 1991, Academy Award nominated for that film. But cackling, confrontational, knowing full well from having studied the law what he can and cannot get away with. So making a spectacle of himself and drawing other people into this drama, and to the point where people don't want to deal with Tom and his family anymore. And everybody, including the authorities, feel like they can't take action. This is quite the opposite. He comes in and brings like a real stillness and a real earnestness to the performance, even being earnest later on when he's trying to save another prisoner. And I think this is why, so far, for me, this show works, is this performance grounds the series in a way that I'm actually kind of surprised. And even with this crazy accent that Bardem is trying to pull off here, really just magnetic. And of course, he makes himself useful. People start to give money. This draws a lot of attention. And in a way, this is where the show becomes this kind of precarious and fascinating object where he is now not in a place where he is secretly stalking and manipulating this family and just trying to put the screws to them little by little until they snap and then they do something which makes them look bad, even as everybody knows that they're under some kind of threat. He comes in and he is the calm. He's the eye of the storm. He comes in and he's saying, oh, I can help you guys out. Oh, I forgive you. I understand. You are all just doing your jobs. And he is like the model, which means that this will allow him to become closer and closer to her. And of course, given what she represents and what she wants to achieve, he is like the perfect personification of what she supposedly should be aspiring to. So it allows him to so easily get close to the family. And that is how he's going to wield this intimidation, terrorism attack against them. And other people are incentivized. Noah wants this guy. They want to believe that this is all going to work out for the best because it puts money in their own pockets. And the show is smart enough to understand that. And honestly, I think that is the main reason that so far this is really working for me. And this scene, just masterclass, his charisma. He's played psychopaths before, charismatic ones. This is very different from the Antosca Gore of No Country for Old Men. It is a little bit closer to the killer he played in Skyfall, because then he still had to be charming sometimes, but not as over the top. I mean, maybe it'll become more over the top, but at this point, he is downplaying everything, which is interesting because I thought about how garish a lot of the design choices are in this series, but then to bring in the threat and he comes off as so mundane, or at least charming, it's really interesting. A couple of key pieces of dialogue here. He talks about fingers and toes. He died thousands of times every day that he was in prison for 17 years. And they just keep taking fingers and toes until eventually they take everything. During a photo opportunity, he crushes a glass in his hand. It very much seems like he's doing this on purpose, but he does seem to glitch when there's flashes of light or some kind of brightness. So maybe this is just kind of a coincidence that pays off for him. And Anna, Amy Adams, shows a real empathy for him as he's talking about what he experienced in prison. He was in a coma, severe brain trauma, and lost some of his sight as well. Tom shows up to help. I do like, again, this how she is leaning on the empathy, or she's starting to be caught up in this empathetic view of Max. And Tom is just like, okay, like enough of this. And he does say, I'm sorry these things happened to you, but stay away from my family, basically. And of course, they've outlined that he's a former Marine, so he can take care of himself. And that is going to almost certainly pay off at some point in the film as well. The film, I should say, the series. Again, I love Bardem's performance. He just like kind of falls over and he's like, oh, my head, making himself look pathetic. This is all probably true, but also minimizing his threat to them. And then the disgust he has pulling that napkin off and throw it on the floor as they walk away. The tourniquet she had put on his hand. Another good scene towards the end of the episode. We have, it's an information dump, but also effective. Anna telling her daughter that this is when I met your, as bad as the Max Cady thing is, and as scary as this whole situation is, this is the case where I met your dad and I started my family and I had you guys and my current relationship was falling apart. And then I got sober. Very important. You kind of throw that in there. So, maybe the excuse of some of the terrible things she does later on when we find that out is like, well, I was using at the time. So partially excused. Perhaps that's what we're setting up there. But it is a sweet moment and the daughter plays this scene very well. And then we get the final scene at the house. A couple of very important things happen here, of course. The alarm goes off again. What's going on? Is there someone in the backyard? Probably just another skunk. And in the backyard, they find a cougar. This had been hinted at by the journalist earlier on that they had found, I should say, a family dog had been killed by a cougar. Family dog, by the way, dies in the previous versions of these stories. In this case, it might be the family cat. Oh, peanut butter. We just have a new kitten in the house, by the way. Oh, no. Don't kill the kitty. Please don't kill the kitty. This is a big, puff, fluffy kitty, not a little kitten like ours, but regardless, no kitty death. But I'm pretty sure there will be animal death here for sure. Not just the skunks. The skunks are just the beginning, just the tip of the iceberg of, unfortunately, some dead animals, I think, in this series. And there's another predator in the backyard. Of course, it's Max Cady. And immediately they are furious. What are you doing here? He says, you left your purse behind. I was just returning it. Your ID was in it. I heard voices, so I came here directly. I guess I'll leave. I'm sorry. And no one takes this as innocent, of course. But again, he's like, it's just, don't be so paranoid, everybody. Why are you guys all ganging up on me? And I love the tone that it hits here. And then as he's leaving, he's like, is everything okay with your son? Which, of course, Tom immediately says, what are you talking about my son? He's like, well, I saw him in the front of the house. He didn't look too good. So again, everything here threatening and also possibly excusable. Zach wanders in completely zonked out, like way too zonked out. I got to tell you. Max, as Tom goes to take care of Zach, Max has another moment with Anna saying like, wow, you really have it all. You really have it all. Look at this pool, this family. I used to have a good life. I wasn't always a good person, but I had a good heart. And then this kind of double friendly threat, another one, where he says, why are you so on edge? Why are you so nervous? You seemed so nervous when you saw me today. And she's like, I'm not nervous. Like, you seem nervous. And then one more shoe to drop, of course. He says to her, for 17 years, I never said a word about what happened. What made you think I would say something now? So what did happen? And of course, the question, I'll have to ask Sona about this too when we get to our conversation. But what does this all mean? What did happen? And here's why I think that the sexual threat to the daughter is not going to be an issue this time. I think there's a realistic chance that Max, or at least they want us to believe this, Max might be the father. She got pregnant during the case. It dragged on for so long that she ended up having the baby during the trial. All these things, all these clues dropped in there. What if she had a relationship with Max? And there's a little moment where he looks at the daughter and says, hi, I just wanted to see you. Now, that could be part of that sexual threat we saw in previous versions of the story, or could be that he just wanted to see his daughter. And of course, this episode opens with a gory detail, but in the middle of this conversation between, or at the end of this conversation with Max and Anna gets called inside. There's something really wrong with him. We got to call the ambulance. Come here. She comes into the house. His foot's all bloody. He's got a missing toe. Fingers and toes. I got to work on that accent. Fingers and toes. That's not it. I'm not even close. I got to work on it. And then a very heightened version of it by playing back that fingers and toes sequence from the actual event, but in a much more arch way. And we had bloody imagery at the beginning of this episode and a very bloody foot here at the end as well. Okay, a lot of setup there for episode 1. It is a pilot, so I got to cram a lot of stuff in there. And maybe that's a critique, by the way, a lot of stuff to cram in. Okay, here is the abbreviated episode 2 so that we can get into that conversation with Sona as well. Okay, we open with a flashback, maybe an homage to the original 62 film, which was shot in black and white. But they didn't make movies like this back then. We see that Max Cady is in the gym at the prison. He's jumped by a bunch of skinheads, and he kills these 3 guys in some pretty grotesque ways, by the way, but the weights are a good weapon, apparently. But then, of course, he gets the trauma to the head, and as he collapses, he sees his wife and child. Something he mentioned before. He had a vision of seeing them, his wife and his child, at the appropriate age they would have been. We find out that Max sleeps in his closet. I think this is in the 91 version as well, maybe in all of these adaptations. But of course, he's uncomfortable being in a full room and therefore sleeps in this closet. Cops show up to arrest him. He's been accused or being accused by the family of having attacked Zach. During the arrest, by the way, they snap his finger the wrong way, which means, of course, that everyone's in the hospital at the same time. We're with the Bowdens, of course, there with Zach, and Max is there with his dislocated finger, fingers and toes. We definitely see that Zach's vision is blurry and has his color filter on it. Again, something we see later on when Tom is microdosing again, which again could be some kind of hallucinogenic. So just some indication that hallucinogenics might have been involved with him as well. Oh, Anna finds out, of course, that Max is there at the hospital. And this is a very important detail to call out, that as she's walking down the hallway, there's this girl we've seen, a young woman, who smashes into her. And of course, Max will see this vision as well later on. So just the indication that this isn't all in his head. There is somebody out there that is on the periphery of all these happenings. Eventually, Natalie, back at the house, discovers in the constructed area of the house. You got to look at that part of the house, by the way. It seems like way too big. I'm thinking about the Scream, the most recent Scream movie as well. Like you got to go into the unfinished part of the house, people in general. Now, for horror films in general, and this is basically a horror film, this has to be a new theme. And they find food cups there, but there also seems to be some candles and some kind of weird stuff. Again, maybe some kind of ritualistic paraphernalia. Anyway, all that is to say that it may have exonerated Max, at least for the moment. We find out a little bit about Natalie here. A very creepy scene, by the way. Again, how are people just getting in and out of this house constantly? There seems to be a classmate of hers that was there for the 4th of July celebration, by the way, in episode 1. She seems to have a crush on her. That seems to be what is occurring here. But just this moment where she hears the alarm go off, she goes to check on the front door, and then there's someone just in the house running through in the background. Turns out to be just a jump scare. It's just her friend. But again, makes you wonder how many people know how to get into that house. The answer is definitely too many. There's a grotesque payoff, by the way, that finger, I knew it, by the way, like when he kept asking to drink something and I got something in my throat. I just feel like I have something in my throat. It's his finger, his toe, I should say, his toe. And they're like, did someone force feed it to him? They're like saying, no, he bit it off himself. It's very easy to bite off a toe. I mean, information I didn't need to know, everybody. I guess you have to be, the hardest part is getting the toe in your mouth. But I guess if you're young enough and flexible enough, it's not that hard. They start to set up a tension here, which maybe is going to continue over the course of the next few episodes or for the rest of the series, possibly, where there is this belief by Anna, who might have secrets she's keeping yet again, that gives her more certainty that Max is definitely the one who is terrorizing the family, where Tom really feels more like it's just their son. He has all these problems. He has had all these problems, and we need to be there for him. We need to focus on him and stop going on and on about Max. And if she's not getting that support at home, meanwhile, Max actually steps up in a way. She misses a appointment to talk to another prisoner who's fighting for his own exoneration. He seems to have lost his spirit. Max shows up and gives him a pep talk. And this ends up getting him hired basically back on to this prisoner justice organization. So it's interesting that you have this person who's infiltrating. Again, this is like one of the main themes here. The idea that if you can find a thing that someone wants to believe and wants and needs, like if you can fill that need, that then people kind of accommodate or even look the other way when things may not be as they appear to be, or just see things the way they want to. Bardem, again, a total highlight in this episode, frustrated with the surgeon, fixing his own finger, going to the prison. And again, you're expecting to see some kind of nefarious presentation of him here. And instead, honestly, seems to be very earnestly communing with this guy, telling him, you need to keep fighting. You have a life outside of here. And then being interviewed, and you can see, very interesting that he's precarious. He's almost on the edge of maybe saying too much. He could almost be tipping his hand that he's not quite right, but he doesn't quite tip over. And everything he seems to say seems to win over the interviewer and everybody around. He talks about his mom dying, his father being an American who impregnated his mom. She eventually committed suicide. Is that true? Wonder if she was murdered, perhaps, by a young psychopath. And then raised by his father. And there's actually a really cool visual flourish here when he's talking about his dad. First of all, we saw that he has tricked somebody into giving his dog, his abused dog, to Cady. And my sense of it is that he feels this connection to this dog that's being mistreated. But of course, we find out that Cady's dad trained dogs himself. So is this something that he will train the dog, maybe to be a weapon, but simultaneously does have this empathy for this caged animal? Cady's dad seemed like a real piece of work. We see in this moment, of course, the light again seems to have triggered Cady. Importantly, that's why I mentioned that I think that there might have been something somewhat sincere about him shattering the glass. The flash seems to trigger him off. And then, of course, this light directly in his eye seems to trigger this fugue state in him. We see some religious iconography here. We see that he was almost certainly caged at times as a way to be trained by his father, baptized by his dad. So a lot of this, his childhood trauma, has made him into this predator that he is now, but may have also given him a very skewed version of morality. So this is all really intriguing. Oh, and of course, the final visual flourish here, beautifully done, by the way, is this baptism of him as this young man, maybe teenager. And then we see Bardem himself emerging from the water and sitting upright. And then, of course, being back in the room in the interview. Very, very cool style here. Very cool scene. And of course, importantly, I should bring this up, by the way, not the way to raise your kids, especially if they're already antagonized by you, that Anna, who's walking in during this interview scene, has unlocked her son's phone by being like, what's this picture? He's like, what picture? She puts the phone up to unlock his phone. Pretty messed up, Anna. Pretty messed up. But of course, is on his computer, is seeing what he's doing, and has read these chat logs he has. And all part of this performance, Max waits for Anna to walk in. And he says, maybe it's too late for me, but I do envision, I live in this nice house with a big backyard. I have a son. I have a daughter. I have a pool. One of my kids is missing a toe. Oh, wait, that's too on the nose. But he even mentions like, maybe I have a cat walking by. Like, it's so on the nose. But he goes, who knows? Maybe it's too late for me, but I was an impatient young man, but I'm a patient man now. And a lot of this dialogue, the impatient man, I have patience now. We're just getting started. Some of these quotes are right from the chat log with this Angel X character. So again, is her son being catfished by this guy or someone on his behalf? But the idea that there's no connection between this Angel X character, let's say it is another person, because do we believe Max is gaming all day? I don't know. Maybe he's a really good gamer and had a lot of time to game in prison. Maybe. I don't know how that works in prison, to be honest. Or maybe there's someone on the outside who has been communicating with him. He was able to communicate with his ex-girlfriend. So is there also a daughter in the mix? Is that this person we've been seeing? And is that the person who's been communicating with Zach as well? Really intriguing stuff. And then we get to the end of episode 2. A couple big deals here. We see that Natalie overhears her parents, who are now very concerned about the Max situation, whispering about, is it possible that he knows what we did? He knows what we did. What did they do? Plant evidence? Is that what they did? Importantly, by the way, the knife was never found from the murder. And of course, the knife is found. This is all the way back to episode 1, which is part of the reason he's been exonerated. Seems very fast to get exonerated. The quick turnaround on that. But important that Natalie overheard that. Also, we see Natalie earlier talking to the son, to Zach. Zach is walking to go see his ex-girlfriend. She doesn't want to communicate with him. I guess he has a second cell phone. And luckily, his sister intercepts him and tells him, not a great idea. But they do kind of agree that the parents are jerks. And we get to the very end of the episode, a very creepy scene where Max goes to rent a house. Where's his money coming from? Maybe he got money from the state? The real estate agent, he kind of charms her and then kind of says, I'm done with you. You can leave now. I need to sit here by myself. Go away. And he sits in this chair and he sees his dead family there with him. He did mention that he's been haunted by the vision of his dead family. So here we are explicitly seeing it. He said, I didn't mean that literally. I was metaphorical, he says earlier. But no, it is literal. So many more shoes yet to drop on this show. But 10 episodes? That's my concern, man. I mean, 2 episodes in, I thought, are they going to be able to drag out a 2-hour movie to this many episodes? We're already 2 hours in. I'm definitely intrigued 2 hours in. There's definitely plenty here. But 10 hours. Well, not 10 hours, 10 episodes. So maybe these episodes will start getting shorter over time. But whatever, 8 hours. That's a long time for this amount of story. Or maybe not. Maybe there's plenty to cover here. So I'm still on board and I can't wait to hear what Sona thought of these episodes. All right, Sona. So the first question I had for you was, we've been previewing that this Cape Fear show is coming. A big deal on Apple TV Plus, very heavily promoted. I'm seeing ads constantly. So Apple has high expectations, but my question for you, first of all, most important, of course, is Sona, is this a somewhat realistic representation of this social justice movement, or the most realistic presentation of this type of organization?
Well, I don't have the inside track as I have worked with them, but not at
Within them. Mm-hmm.
Yes. But I will say I have been lucky enough to attend the Innocence Project Gala, and it was very similar to what was depicted in that it's this lovely social event with a lot of the people the organization has exonerated, and they give these speeches that are really moving. I mean, I remember actually being moved to tears at the one that I was at. So there are definitely similarities. There are also, as you can imagine, the people in this position, the clientele has been through a lot and they deal with a lot. And so there definitely are times you need to drop everything because there is some sort of crisis going on with the client. So that was similar as well. I can't really speak other than that to the inner workings of the politics of it, which seems to be a big undercurrent here.
Do prosecutors and defendants normally get married in the middle of a case?
Fairly unusual for something like that to happen, I would say.
I was, obviously wanted to joke with you about that, given your experience, and assuming that this is a very minimally heightened, if not totally preposterous representation of this. Although, like you mentioned, I think the details of this type of gala and even what Cady's going to present himself as an appealing potential employee within the organization, the show is going to explain that in pretty earnest terms, because of course if he just looks like a crazy maniac that looks like he's overtly stalking and threatening people, that would be the most mismanaged organization. So of course he's going to seduce his way, which and I guess we'll circle back to that performance itself. But before we even get there, maybe I'll save this for the end, because what I was going to raise is that obviously this intention of this show is just to be an overt melodrama, and maybe with deeper issues of like how outside forces can disrupt or take advantage of weaknesses within a family relationship, which of course is the theme of Cape Fear pretty much throughout all its adaptations. So regardless of the fact that, presumptively this is not going to be very realistic, I'm more curious, and maybe this is only something we can answer way later down in the run of this series, is whether this will be, a fair representation or maybe even a negative representation of this type of initiative, which would be unfortunate to say the least, considering how much good they do, or if they just simply use it as a jumping off point for the show. And we'll see if it takes any kind of opinion on that. But I'm curious to see how they use this plot development. But in general, this is, as I mentioned in that little preview last week, is very heightened. But I'm very curious to know if this tone worked for you, if the performances worked for you, if there's just something innately compelling about this type of story. I know you like thrillers. I know you like psychological thrillers. So it kind of hits a lot of sweet spots, but then maybe the tone is off for you. Anyway, I was curious. What's your general take?
Well, having watched 2 episodes, I can say I found this deeply disturbing.
Yes.
And I'm interested in watching the rest, but I actually don't know if we were not talking about this show, if I would continue to watch the rest, because it's just really unsettling, isn't it?
Yes, I agree. Well, that's kind of what I liked about it.
That's definitely what they're going for, and they are accomplishing it.
Yeah, it like basically just to reiterate a lot of things I said before, I thought that without, and maybe we can get into this as well, I think without Bardem's performance, which I needed the show to ground the tone somewhat early on. He doesn't show up until like halfway through episode 1. And then or maybe more actually. So I needed that, and it worked. So I think that's the first thing that pulled me in. I wanted to see more of his performance. I wanted to see the way he can make this character both menacing and seductive, and possibly offering some plausible deniability to at least some of the things that are happening that are getting blamed on him or will be. So that is interesting. But the tone was a little heightened. So if the show had just always been at that pitch, it's kind of like that problem I have with the aversion I have to Ryan Murphy, right? Where everything is just so heightened all the time, constantly. Every performance is over the top. It just becomes camp from beginning to end. So this I needed that. And by the way, Patrick Wilson, I thought really good in his role too. Again, a very, he gets to play the almost stereotypical, dutiful husband, although he's probably going to have skeletons in his closet as well. But I still felt like there was his performance. So all that meant, in general, what I'm trying to say is that I think that it seemed like they had intentionality to what they were doing instead of just being hysterical. However, to your point, I do wonder if this will be something that will, be too much, especially when you think about this being dragged out for an entire series of TV.
Yeah, I feel like it's actually not going to be too much, but I do think it's going to continue hitting this mark. So user experience may vary, right? As far as how appealing you find that.
Oh, and the other thing I was going to say complementarily that I think you're touching on as well, by the way, going back to your original point, is the constant dread, like the horror,
Yes.
this as a horror show, and Antosca, the creator of the show, has done straight up horror and then kind of transitioned to these adaptations of true crime and has like won Emmy Awards for some of those series. And I think for the most part, I thought those were pretty good. This is a blend of almost like that true crime type story, but with the overt horror from his earlier work. So, but to me, as a fan of horror, I actually thought that worked really well. And it even works strong as a metaphor, right? Where you see this family is coming apart and then all of a sudden, like really chilling in episode 1, just that there's someone standing in the doorway upstairs. And so all these secrets, and there's someone living in their house, which of course, by definition, that is like one of my,
so creepy.
So creepy. Just the idea that someone's in your house without you knowing is always so creepy to me. And I think to many people, obviously.
Yeah, very much not a New York City apartment problem, thankfully.
Right, yes.
Although, this is really a detour, but there was this TikTok thing going on a couple of years ago about how some people in their apartments, there's a hole behind their medicine cabinet.
Yes.
And
that was in New York, right? Exactly. Yeah, there's a whole other room.
Yes.
As a fan of horror, again, I like that. I like the fact that it is giving me those horror vibes. As a matter of fact, Widow's Bay, which is one of the most popular horror products, and horror is having quite a moment right now. Of course, you have these 2 massive hits in movie theaters that shocked everybody and are just becoming phenomenal successes on very small budgets. But simultaneously, you have this huge hit, one of the biggest TV horror hits in recent memory, Widow's Bay, and which is also excellent and also on Apple TV. But honestly, because of the comedy, so much of the horror gets undercut. Even when you take it seriously, then there'll be like kind of a joke that, even if it's an episode later, that kind of undercuts some of the tension that's been building. This show, on the other hand, has no relief from that tension, which, again, as a fan of horror, I enjoy that. My concern is over such a long period of time, unlike a movie, whether you can sustain that for such a long period of time. However, what I would say is 2 episodes in, and I'm curious to get your feedback on this, 2 episodes in, I'm worried, like this is already a feature-length movie, and maybe I've already tired of the material. I cannot wait to see the next episode, just out of curiosity. So many, and maybe too many, dangling mysteries, but I'm very curious. Early in the going, of course, very early in the going, but I'm very curious as to where it goes.
I'm pretty stressed out about where it's going to go.
Very stressful. Honestly, though, do we need the kid like swallowing his own toe in episode 1? It seems like they've escalated things very, very quickly.
Yeah. I will say, I don't know this actor that's playing the son, but his depiction of bringing that toe up, I was actually dry heaving in my apartment. Like, I was gagging. It was so vivid to me. And when your brain realizes what's happening before they've actually literally connected the dots in the show, and I'm just like imagining it, it was actually making me gag.
And for anybody who's somehow listening to this conversation and hasn't actually watched the show, it is kind of shocking, the gore here, right? Like you think about the double shot to the head that opens the episode was insane.
Yes. Yes.
And it's the second shot, by the way. The cold, that's all the cold open. Like we have the first shooting, and then she survives that, the call on the phone, By the way, the voice on the phone, you have to assume that's Cady, right? I don't know. They're trying to hide it with some kind of fuzziness on the reception, but who else has that accent?
Right.
Craziest accent I've ever
No,
heard.
it
It's
has
like
to be.
Spanish and
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and Louisiana.
Southern.
Louisiana.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
it's Savannah, actually, right? So it's like Southern and Spanish at the same time. Crazy. But the thing I want to speak about the most beyond some of these things, I definitely want to get your idea on where you're at with all these. So many, everybody has some mystery going on here. So very curious to get your feedback on those individual plot points. But I think this is instrumental to whether this works for you or not. What did you think of Bardem's performance? Did it work? Like for me, it was magnetic. Like I was like kind of all over the place. Like, what's this show trying to do? And then he shows up at that event and he takes the microphone and it's like he took control of the show. And I think without that, I would be much more maybe off completely on the show. But how did his performance work for you?
I think it's great. I think it's upsetting, but I think it's great.
When you say it's upsetting, though, but do you think, I mean, of course, we have the history of this adaptation before. Do we just assume that Cady is this one-dimensional villain in this adaptation? Do you think the show's trying to set up any kind of ambiguity about what his overall design might be?
Maybe I'm biased because I have seen the movie, the 1991 movie.
Yeah.
So for me, I have a feeling that I know somewhat where this is headed. I know it's not a remake, but I doubt that they have changed the character arc so much that somehow he is a good guy. So
yeah, I don't think he's going to save the day, but I do wonder if there's some ambiguity as to how villainous he is. Oh, not that. Let me take that back. I'm pretty sure this show doesn't work if he's not the villain, but
right.
If he is also a victim of something,
and a very calculating one.
Oh, yes, exactly.
As you mentioned, that feeling of dread, like it just feels like he has had nothing but time to think of all the ways he can torture this family. And that is his plan. That is what I take from it.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, that's also the hook of the show is, can he drive this family mad? And I think this will be this is what's going to tap in and make to this underlying anxiety that many of us have, that your middle life, or I should say your traditional, successful, upper middle class life is going to be derailed and destroyed by this outside force, which of course is the appeal, I think, of the Cape Fear and a lot of these psychological thrillers, by the way. So not just Cape Fear as a template for those, but of course, and probably an inspiration for a lot of these type of psychological thrillers through the decades. But that's my concern as well. There's a difference in saying that this person, I mean, of course, I'm going to judge it against the 1991 version, that this person can come in, for the most part, Nick Nolte's character is cheating on his wife there, but he's trying to not philander anymore. He's moved away to avoid temptation, etc. For those who don't remember that film. So there are aspects of it that are overlapping with this story as well. But for the most part, it's as if Cady is just revealing those cracks in the family. And my concern here again, and by the way, here's a show that I actually really enjoyed these first two episodes in their own grim way, probably because it's enjoyable in an odd way. Like it's not something I'm getting from watching anything else right now. It's kind of an old school psychological thriller. So I do enjoy it for some of its obvious thrills, but I am enjoying it. But it's going to sound critical in the fact that the family seems a little too chaotic already. So it's not like he needs to stir the pot that much, right? Because we start off with the son primarily is already like really seems to be in a really bad mental place as soon as the show begins.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's all because of sharing that picture.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's all because of that, but that is the current, most recent event, at least. Sharing the graphic photo of his girlfriend, it's felt like an interesting way to weave in kind of, I don't want to say pop culture. That makes it sound like it's something not serious, but
something from the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Something from the moment where honestly, I just assumed he had some mental health issues and I would have been fine with that. I didn't really need that kind of triggering events. But whatever. Maybe it will become relevant later.
I assume it's going to tie into the plot in some way at some point. So, but yes, it could have just been that he just had a really ugly breakup. But I guess that because he got to do something and took the blame for it, even if it was something he was only sharing with a friend, and how that spilled over, and then so he might feel like I'm innocent here. So I think that actually speaks a little bit to the moment as well. Not only the online gaming and the possible catfishing, which is something that we've seen here as well, but this idea of the woe is me, the victimhood of these young men, even as they're
Are we back to the male loneliness epidemic? That's such a theme lately.
Or maybe just like the toxic online culture of men, right? Because you can imagine him going down some kind of incel rabbit hole. But I don't know if the show's actually going to go that way. Okay, so some of the mysteries here. So first of all, everybody's got secrets. Let's start with some of the obvious ones. So we have Patrick Wilson's the husband character, which, by the way, has the same name in the previous adaptations. Just to put this out there, the husband is the one who's basically being preyed upon by the Max Cady character, and the family is kind of like collateral damage. And the tension is in the husband hiding his secrets. And for example, he hires thugs at one point to beat up Cady, and then that is blows up in his face. Spoilers for the novel and the book and the adaptations, etc. But but in minor plot point anyway. But and then of how that blows up in his face, right? But the point being that it's all about how the husband has this onus on him, and he's trying to keep the family together, and maybe he's becoming like this is what Cady's doing. Is like Cady's like forcing him to play dirty like him to show him like, oh, we're not so different, right? And then like that kind of battle over their soul overtly. And of course, Scorsese always has religious themes in his films that, we have all this religious iconography. He's quoting the Bible all the time because he is like, I am judging you. I am God's instrument for judging you. We haven't seen any of that yet, although we do see some kind of Santeria imagery and stuff here. So I'm wondering if they're going to have that aspect of it is going to play in at all into this story, which would be maybe, I think, overloaded for sure if they go and start throwing that in here as well. But there is that aspect of the husband in the previous adaptations, and this is the same. The character's name is the same. However, here, in some ways, the character who feels the most guilt possibly is the wife, who was actually his defense attorney, not the same in previous adaptations, obviously.
Right.
And so that's interesting to be like they were on both sides. And like, did they collude to put Cady in jail, right? So all of that. But let's start with there's so many mysteries here. So first of all, the husband is microdosing something. We don't know what this is.
What is that?
So is it LSD or is he microdosing like THC? Because he just mellows out, but maybe that makes him an unreliable narrator at some point in the future. But it just seems unnecessary to have him hiding this microdosing habit, which he is hiding, of course. So it's not like he's even doing it in public or in the open. His wife doesn't know about it, or maybe she has complained about it before and now he's doing it secretly. And then he also gets a voicemail from some woman who's saying, you need to call me back. And of course, using the previous adaptations as a reference point, is he possibly cheating on his wife? So that's the first point. Mm-hmm. What do you think of Patrick Wilson's performance here, by the way? Did it work for you?
Yeah, I don't know his work all that well. The key thing I remember
Montclair native, by the way. Montclair native.
Is that right?
He's one of the owners of the Bellevue Theater now.
The key thing that I remember him for, which is a fairly obscure reference in 2026, is an episode of Girls that he did. Oh,
yes, of course. Yes, very famous episode.
Yeah. So I'm not all that familiar with him, but I did like him here as kind of an understated dad trying to appear calm, cool, and collected, assuming that he is going to reach a breaking point eventually, right? Because some wild stuff is happening.
I also like the fact that he's like jacked, and he's gotten extra jacked in the last few years, ever since he made that second Aquaman movie. People were like sharing memes going like he has the better physique than Jason Momoa. So that he's been like ultra jacked recently. But I like that they tie it into the the series as well, because he has a Marine background. So I think that's important because later on, when he probably does become physical and does need to, and also
it'll make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's also a threat, by the way, right? Like, you can imagine Cady, who is like doing push-ups all day, and Bardem's in good shape from the little bit we see of him here in the series as well. Of course, he's been working out in gym, and part of his workout is apparently crushing people's skulls on the weight benches. But we have to talk about that flashback in episode 2. Really, another really grim image, of course. It's like the episodes open, both of them, with these really gross, very violent sequences. But then you assume he's going to be physically capable and a threat. Like I said, it's like Cady can't just be physically imposing because you have somebody who's, a Marine inside the house. So he needs to be a little more psychological about it, which I like. I like that they're on equal footing physically. So it has to become more psychological, which I like that setup. And I also like, to your point, I like that, like when you see him at the event and Cady squeezes that glass, and like now whether he faked that injury or he didn't fake it, but he intentionally cut himself, or whether he really did have this mental glitch, because we do see that he is glitching. And we have to talk about that as one of these unanswered questions so far, that when they're in the back and you see that Amy Adams is getting like emotionally feeling that like, oh, I did him wrong. And then he comes in and he's very terse and he's like, I'm sorry that this happened to you, if this is true, but like stay away from my family. I like the fact that he's just like, no nonsense, that you need to have the balance of, she can be more of the bleeding heart, which of course is probably what is the dynamic of their marriage as well. In that interview, he says, she's a good person, I'm just a good lawyer. And so I think that's part of the dynamic that's being expressed there. And I really liked, by the way, I didn't pick up on this the first time I watched it, but I watched this again with Kim. And I really liked that scene where he confronts his son and the son slaps himself, and like the hurt on his face, like his disappointment as a father in that moment was like very, like really well communicated. Like I think he did a really good job there. But of course, the selling point here is Bardem, I think, from the performance standpoint. My question to you is, honestly, maybe not working for me. One of my absolute favorite actresses ever, Amy Adams, like in Arrival.
I did not know that about you.
I've loved her in so many things, even in like Sharp Objects. If you've never seen that, excellent in that. Yeah. So just one of my favorites. And honestly, not really vibing with his performance so far.
Really?
What do you think? It's working better for you, it seems?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I always think that I'm not very good at telling good acting from bad acting unless it is spectacularly bad or really, really very good. So I kind of didn't notice it either way for me, which means that I'm fine with it.
Well, I mean, that's part of the critique. I don't think she's doing a bad job. Like, it's taking me out. I think she's in the tone of the show. It just isn't elevating, but it could be very early on, because right now it's a nearly cliched performance. You see her expression changing. She starts to feel when Cady's telling his story, you start to see that empathy pulling her. But then you see later on where she's accusing him of all these things she can't possibly prove. And she should be a little wary of that, considering their history. And then, but then she may know things about him that, what was their relationship before? Big question mark here, right? So there is aspects of it that we still don't know the full context for, but it also felt, just not surprising in any way. So it's not to say that she's giving a bad performance. I just don't think she's not the main reason I would watch the show, let's say.
Interesting. Okay.
But this could all be a setup for some kind of character change over the course of the season. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. Was the gore too much? Was this kind of like like I mentioned before, we have multiple scenes here. First of all, the reveal of the toe, very bloody, of course, him throwing it up in the hospital. So not shying away from any of this stuff. The double headshot as the cold open to the entire series. And the brutal fight, that black and white, at least it's in black and white, a fight sequence, the flashback to him in prison where he gets this injury. So Is this too much for you? I know you're not really a horror fan, right? Although, I mean, some of your favorite films are horror films, but you're not like overtly, definitely not into the gory aspects of it in general, right?
Yeah, it's for sure too much for me. Yes.
So I actually think it might be too much for some of the audiences they're trying to appeal to with this very material. So I'm curious to see how people feel about it over time. Also worried and wondering if is that going to be the template for the show where
I hope not. Oh my gosh.
Every episode opens with a really grotesque opening sequence.
Yeah, I do feel like you could have gotten the message across with a little less gore. Maybe I'm missing the point, but I would have understood. With it being a little less graphic, I still would have had the same takeaway.
I mean, some of what happens in the gym is so crazy, like the bar going through the guy's head, right? Just to name one thing.
Yeah.
But then also I think about the suicide in episode 1, the how insane that is that, we get the first gunshot, which is shocking. And then the blood is just pouring out of her face. And then she, the blood caking that entire wall when she gets the second shot. So, completely. And I do wonder, honestly, is that so much that it turns off some of the very people who would be fans of this show?
Right.
Okay, back to some of these mysteries. We, of course, have, I was trying to start with the low-hanging fruit, which is, do you think that the husband is hiding an affair?
For some reason, I don't think so.
So you think there's something else that he's hiding with that voicemail? I mean, it's the obvious choice, but I'm thinking about the previous adaptation. But maybe that's too obvious a choice.
Was he having an affair in the previous one? I don't remember.
Nick Nolte's having an affair, yeah. So Ileana Douglas, who ends up getting assaulted by.
She's great.
She's great, but that's one of his. But apparently, he has a pattern.
I see. Okay.
Although he's trying to be better in that film. So maybe that's the same thing we're seeing here, possibly. We'll see.
Yeah, I had forgotten that. So, okay.
I guess we're just spoiling that movie. Anyway, I mean, at this point, I've already spoiled some major plot.
30 years old. I think we're okay.
Probably. Although something so old is unseen again, right? So it's possible. Blind spot for everybody. The 35 years old. My God. Oh, other mystery. So do you think that Max Cady is the father of Amy Adams' oldest child, the daughter?
Yeah. I do feel like they slept together. I'm not sure if I feel like he's the father.
That you think that maybe she doesn't know? You think that's what it might be?
Oh, that could be. What are you thinking?
I don't know. I mean, they're definitely hinting very heavily. There's a couple of times where I think the podcaster who's stalking her, those damn podcasters, is stalking her in the street.
Right.
And he says, what do you think about the rumors? And I wonder if maybe I have to assume that people have been speculating, Redditing about this for a while when you think about the fact that people would say, definitely the prosecutor is actually the father. And we know this because of the, it's just like, speculation you would imagine on the internet, given the culture we live in now. But of course, he was also prosecuting Cady at the time. So I would assume that this is a rumor that's out in the wild anyway. And I think the show definitely wants us to consider that, especially when you, once again, rewatching episode 1 with my wife, that at the very end, 2 things. He says, I just wanted to see her, the daughter. And, just says that in passing when he's in the backyard after they find the panther or cougar back there. And then, of course, when everybody goes inside and he takes her aside and says, I've been in jail for 17 years and I never said anything about what happened. Why would I start now?
Right.
Which, of course, and it is an excellent point, right? Like on point 1 is that if this is the case, that, of course, she's terrified this is going to come out, but he hasn't said anything so far. So why hasn't he, if he had this over her, unless he has been plotting this revenge for so long that he's been holding this in his back pocket the whole time because he knows in 17 years this is going to pay off.
It's possible.
But maybe another performance, by the way, that rubbed me the wrong way here. But let's talk about more mysteries. Is the son? I mean, the son is doing a good job of seeming like he is really, really out of it. He's doing a good job
really
of that.
Out of it, yeah.
So it's really not the performance I'm critiquing. It's just the way that the character's written. He seems to be so inscrutable and just so out of it continuously that it makes him kind of a hard character to empathize with. Although I have to say, having had teenage nephews, that there was a period of time when they were teenagers where getting one sentence out of their mouths, honestly, it was as if it took all the effort in their bodies to be able to answer simple questions. So I'm like, maybe that's why this bothered me so much. I'm like, I remember that period of time. I don't want to watch it in this show. It's too much, too intense to consider. Oh, and another important mystery here is what did he see while he was drugged? So, okay, but let's sit on the sun for just a moment. First of all, he's in the kitchen. He's making like piles of spaghetti and a sandwich. And his sister's like, what are you doing? You're feeding like a family?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, I'm going to be gaming tonight. I need to, fuel or something. But then there's someone in the house. And then we find out later on that someone's been like sitting in the house in that unfinished part of the house, living back there. And at first, when I watched this the first time, I thought, oh, it was like Cady was in there or somebody was in there camping out. But then when I watched the second time and you see that figure in the house up in his bedroom, I'm like, no, he had like that. All that food he's preparing was to feed somebody else. So who is that person who's in the house? I assume it's not this girl that he's been chatting with. I mean, if it even is a girl, this person he's been chatting with, because that's someone he probably hasn't met online, but there is somebody in the house. And I think he knows they're in the house. So that is a really disturbing part of this show and totally unexplored at this moment. But then when he sees something, right, he sees this very disturbing, by the way, AI recreation of this is what I would look like if I had survived. I guess somebody's made these AI videos to slander Cady or to bolster the case against him. And he's a very famous case, apparently. But he sees this actual kid when he's in this, fugue state or something, this drug-induced state he is later on when he gets his toe removed. And maybe that's the other really basic question. Do you think that it's Cady who took his toe off? Fingers and toes.
Well, that does seem too much of a coincidence, right? That he certainly is involved in it. Whether he did it himself, I don't know. We keep seeing that lady with the mask and the hood.
Yes, right.
So she could be somehow involved, or he could have some other. He seems to have these acolytes, right, that are into him, which is something you hear about happening with people in prison. So maybe he's got all these, not all these, but you only need a couple, I guess, minions to do to execute his evil plans. I don't know. I feel like he's got to have something to do with it. It's too random otherwise.
Yeah, I'm curious to know if someone's manipulating him as well, or if he's manipulating them, or if they're working on their own on his behalf. But I do think that that's all in play for the reasons you said. The big one, of course, is that there is a read, and I've even seen this online, where people are saying that the female character that Cady sees at the very end, he like grabs the scar on his head. We know he's had these kind of breaks sometimes if there's a lot of light or something. And then he sees that woman. But of course, in the hospital, that same woman crashes into Amy Adams' character. And which, of course, is telling us two things. One is that this person is intentionally getting in her way, but also the fact that she's not just purely a figment of anyone's imagination. He's a real person. So, yeah, like you mentioned, has she already infiltrated the house? Is she working with Cady in some way? Has she already been working with the son, or like working the son, I should say, has been in the house already? And how does she intersect with this Angel X character, if at all? Like, was that just Cady catfishing him? But then there's this other acolyte that you mentioned that's already infiltrated in some ways. I don't think we're supposed to know right away.
Right. But, I don't think you're supposed to know. I think you're supposed to have your guesses, but I don't think you're supposed to know.
Yeah, I have a feeling the show is going to make us every single week is going to continue to add mysteries and then answer some and then unravel others. Is it too much though, do you think? I mean, we're wondering like, who is, the dad might have LSD hallucinations. The son is definitely seeing hallucinations while he's been
Maybe that's
abducted.
who he was feeding his hallucination.
What, the microdosing?
No, the son. Yeah.
That the son was...
No, never mind. Just delete that part.
I wouldn't be. I was going to speculate on that maybe like somebody got their hands on the dad's LSD and was like,
it could be as well. Yes.
Like whoever's in the house has gotten into the dad's stash, and that's what had just been dosing the kid. Like, who knows? Putting it right into that spaghetti that he was preparing, the giant bowl of spaghetti.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Is that like maybe the giant bowl of spaghetti was for him and the hallucination? But yeah.
Maybe the dad dosed it.
Silly.
I was dosing that pasta for myself. I'm not supposed to eat it. The kid ends up eating his toe. He was hungry. There was nothing else to eat.
Stop. Oh, God.
I like how they go into detail going like he could have easily bitten it off himself. It doesn't take that much.
Well, I guess they're trying to make you think, well, this kid is not quite together. So it's possible he did bite it off himself. I mean, but then I was thinking that would require some degree of flexibility, which I have, but I don't know if a teenage boy would.
I think when you're younger, you're much more flexible.
Trying to think, could I reach my toe? I think I could, but...
I mean, when you were a teenager, you could do it easily. So we all had much more coverage back then.
My kid is not a teenager, but his hamstrings are very tight. I don't think he could do it.
I have tight hamstrings too, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, who's the parentage, of course, of the kid? Is someone dosing? I mean, that is actually interesting. And I hadn't thought about that, but it's possible that it is the same dosing that's getting into the kid's food. Like, so it might have come from inside the house, literally. Like, someone could have just gotten their hands on the dad's stuff and just put the whole, it's not a microdose, it's a macrodose. And maybe that's what happened there. The kid just showing up back at home after losing the toe and just like being like, I'm hungry. I'm going to get some, or I'm thirsty, actually. I'm very thirsty. I got some OJ.
Yeah.
Who is this other person that we keep seeing, of course, and how are they connected to Cady? Any other big mysteries there? Anything else you can think of? What are the biggest questions you have coming off of this? Like, are you going to enjoy the show? That's one, obviously. But
the biggest question is, how upsetting is this going to be for me? Yeah.
Right.
Well, I am curious. These aren't really concrete things about the plot, but I am curious about how much this will follow the same arc of the 1991 movie, which I actually just looked up and quickly read the plot summary before I started watching because I was curious. And even though we saw it together, it was 30 years ago, and I don't really remember it all that well, except for a few very key scenes. In the Apple still image, Javier Bardem has those heart-shaped sunglasses on, which I kind of remember from the 1991 movie, right? Sunglasses like that.
That makes me think of the Lolita movie more than
maybe I'm getting
which
confused.
Would be an interesting intersection, but maybe.
Yeah, maybe I'm confused. But so I'm curious about, obviously it's not a remake, but how much the general arc of it is going to follow that. I'm curious about the symbolism of the animals. Have you noticed how many animals are involved in this? In just 2 episodes, we've seen so many animals.
Yeah, we have the dead skunks, which of course very subtly represent the family. We have the cougar shows up, right?
Yes, and there's a possum.
Oh, right.
And there's a cat that is a pet, not like a...
Yes, peanut butter.
Yeah, I feel like there might have been one more animal, but I'm not sure. But that's a lot in 2 episodes, is it not?
It is a lot.
So I feel like there is something symbolic going on with, well, I think with the skunks, it was pretty clear, right? Because there were 4 skunks dead in the pool.
Right.
That one is right on the nose. But the others, there's something going on with the animals. So I'm interested in whether that symbolism will continue and what it all means.
By the way, I'm just finding out that Joe Anders, the actor who plays Zach Bowden, the boy, is actually Kate Winslet's son.
Oh, wow. Well, I think he's doing a great job of playing this very strange role.
By the way, her daughter just made, I think, her film debut, not debut, but maybe her breakthrough last year. Mia Thrippleton is her name, and or that's the name she uses anyway. And she was in The Phoenician Scheme last year, which she is fantastic. And
good for her.
Just a recommendation. I think you can stream it on Amazon Prime.
Well, so I do think, to go back to your question, I think this plot has a lot of potential to be very interesting as it kind of unwinds itself. And I am really curious about what really happened. So this has a lot of potential. I am mildly concerned that it's going to go more in the direction of being gory than exploring those plot developments. But that's not a major concern for me at this point.
Yeah, but general, and maybe this is to grab people's attention with some of these gory plot points early on, and then the show settles in a little bit more. Because the things that, for me, the show, what works best in the show is this very idea that, like, imagine this person who is maybe overtly evil, wants to do you bad, but also presents innocently, and that you, if you're wrong about what you think of them, would be just doubling down on this terrible thing you already did, who represents this terrible thing you did, is now infiltrating your life. Because another really important point in episode 2 is that he goes and has another great scene for Bardem, where he goes to prison and he talks to this guy who is thinking of giving up on fighting, and that he basically does this on not behalf, but does this instead in lieu of Anna, who is dealing with the fallout of what happened to her son. And he goes there not just purely to, like, what he says to this guy seems legit. It's coming from the heart. So he is really compelling again in that moment. So he feels like he is complicated. He's both of those things. But now imagine you have all this tension that you might have been wrong, that this guy, or alternately, this guy's actually trying to actively destroy my family. And now it's like your biggest weakness, right? Like, this person's going to now be working with you. Everyone around him is going to be like, this is like the representation of what we're trying to achieve. And meanwhile, you're like, you can't just go and say, don't trust them. You're going to sound like the kind of reactionary reaction that gets these people never released from prison. So it is like a perfect stew of all these anxieties. And I'd like to set up, but I do wonder if they're just going to always go for the shock value. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I also feel, just as far as setting, there's something about these shows that are set in the South where kind of the heat and the tension of being in that kind of heat and humidity comes across the screen. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I think is nice here. I think it's like adding some atmosphere to the whole creepiness of the whole plot.
It's like the what is that? Oh, Midnight in the Garden of Good and
That's
Evil.
exactly what I was thinking of. Yes.
Yeah, hot, sticky, southern summer. Do you remember what are they in? I thought they were in Florida first. And they are in Savannah, right?
They specifically said they're in Savannah, which then confused me because Cape Fear is in North Carolina, right?
Oh, right. Yes. No, but you know what? I think they're all set in Savannah, but they end in even the original one.
Is that what happened?
But I think it's because, you can drive to Cape, like the...
Yeah, North maybe Carolina. They're closer than I think. My geography's bad.
Yeah, I mean, you could drive to... We were in Savannah and we drove easily to North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, very intrigued, very curious about where they're going with all this, and so many mysteries. But we'll see if we can make it all the way through this series. So far,
you'll be fine. You'll be good.
Why? Because of the gore. It's not like the horror elements, unless they're really effective, are probably not going to be enough to keep me engaged, though. Because I do like if they just keep dragging the plot on week after week, and I feel like they're, I have that kind of. I don't want to relitigate the whole your friends and neighbors conversation we had, but the idea that in that show, there were things from moment to moment that were appealing in a particular episode. But by the end, it felt like they didn't know how to wrap things up. They dropped whole plot lines and whole characters from the show by the time they got to the end. So, I do worry that this will be like a lot of stuff that's going to come what's this mean? And then it's just a bunch of red herrings that either are not important or just get dropped completely. And then they go back to basically going to the core Cape Fear storyline at the end after spinning things out for a bloated 8 episodes or something like that would be bad, I think. But I mean, but
it's
the
this show is more calculated than that.
Oh,
but
I agree.
I could be
I
wrong.
think they're setting things up. And by the way, one thing I do want to mention, and maybe this pertains specifically to that unreliable narration, that one of the very positive reviews I read for this, and the critics have seen 8 of the 10 episodes, so not the last 2. So I guess there's some reveal that they want to keep under wraps until the end, which is important, by the way, because, for example, even like the Severance season 2, the critics got to see the entire show. So they weren't hiding anything in that particular season of the show. So I think it is important that they're not revealing something at the end. They did the same thing with Presumed Innocent, by the way, right? Which is a corollary to this show. Another book adaptation that is based on a film from the 90s. That is, there's a lot of parallels there, right? Family at risk, everybody keeping secrets. So I think this is like their a follow-up in a way, spiritually, to their Presumed Innocent adaptation. And in that film, as that series as well, they did not reveal the ending. So maybe they were obviously, in that case, trying to preserve the reveal of who the killer was. Right. Here, there might be something similar where they're trying to keep things under wrap. But what I was going to say is that in a very positive review I read of this, and there's been some very negative ones as well, but in some of the most positive, someone mentioned that there are some stylistic choices early on that you don't understand why they were made until much later in the show. So I do hope that some of this tone that might be kind of like, where are they going with all this at this moment, might be, for example, an unreliable narrator or multiple POVs that we're not fully aware of at this moment. So I'm also curious to see if some of this fever dream sense of this show is also intentionally setting us up for something that maybe isn't going to come, or maybe setting us up for something that comes much later on. So anyway, all those things are intriguing to me.
When you say fever dream, usually we mean that as like, these things are really happening, but it feels like a fever dream. Whereas here, there are actual hallucinations happening.
It's part of the appeal, honestly, to see how that will all play out. All right, so we will have a much more traditional plot breakdown type conversation with just one episode, episode 3, and it'll be on Friday, so shortly after the episode drops, and we go back to our Friday schedule. And we'll see if this is enough show for us to talk about. If not, I also curious, Sona, to see if something you can watch in parallel is this Tatiana Maslany series called Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed. Have you watched any of that?
My husband started watching that the other day, and I joined in the middle, and it seemed really wild what was going on while I walked in on it, like really wild. What is the plot of that show?
That show is about Tatiana Maslany's character. She is a fact checker for a newspaper, believe it or not. She lives in Brooklyn, I think is where she lives. And she is newly divorced, and she is having basically has a relationship virtually with a cam boy. Yeah. And then during one of their sessions,
from the husband from Nurse Jackie, by the way, which is another obscure reference on my point. But
and his her ex-husband is what's his name?
The guy from Nurse Jackie.
Oh, Jake Johnson was in Nurse Jackie. I thought he was.
No. Sorry, you're right. I thought it was the guy from Nurse Jackie, but it in fact was Jake Johnson. I'm confusing things.
Yeah, it's from the New Girl. Yeah.
If you want to know what it's like to watch TV with me, this is a conversation I had with my husband when I walked in.
While you were watching the show?
Yes. Hey, it's the guy from Nurse Jackie. No, it's the guy from New Girl. Correct.
And so she's in this virtual relationship with this guy, and he gets assaulted on camera.
Yeah.
And then she gets a call that she needs to pay some money or her life is going to implode. And I'm going to slightly spoil just the first episode as a pitch to the audience if you haven't seen it, and pitch to you, Sona. But as I was watching this show, I'm like, okay, not that intrigued by the show, to be honest, right? But what I say is that she uses her detecting skills to find out where this guy lives.
Yes, I saw this. Yes.
And I was like, oh, that's clever. She's not just a damsel in distress. And then my pitch about the show, by the way, is that it, first of all, puts the screws to our protagonist every single episode. Like the tension just ratchets up and ratchets up. And it's almost preposterous, but it is addictive to just be like, what new hell is she going to find herself in? And, but the other thing about it is that it's not like the eye roll. Like, why doesn't she tell somebody this is going on? Instead, here's the minor spoiler. By episode 2, she has told everybody what's going on.
Yes.
And then you're like, well, of course, this is going to, it'll be like a salvation for her. But no, because we find who a real villain is here, which is like really intriguing.
Okay, I'm not there yet. I'm at the point where she went into his house, her online romances apartment that she has discovered.
And she found his body?
Yes. That's where we ended it.
Okay, well, somebody at the very end of that episode, she's hiding in the house and someone's walking up the stairs to dismember this body, right? So with a saw.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay.
Oh, I think you made it to, maybe you just missed the last 1 minute of the show.
I missed the last few seconds. Yeah. Because you know what? My kid was around. And so then you see the bathtub and we were like, not now. And so we turned it off. Yeah.
Oh, wait till the saw shows up. That definitely the good time to turn the TV off.
This is like an interesting insight into what it's like to watch TV with me. This is all that's happening. I'm mistaking actors for other actors. My kid is walking in and we're going, whoa, this is not for you. Yeah, all of this is happening. It's a very chaotic experience, which is why generally when we talk about shows, I watch them after bedtime.
Of course, that's it has inevitably happens.
Yeah.
And the kids want to take control of the TV at all times.
Yeah. So, so I missed those last few seconds. That's very scary.
So yes, so that's those are the last few seconds, but that's where it's like a minor spoiler for the next episode. She does escape, of course. They don't kill her at the end of episode 1. And but we reveal who the person with the saw is, and I won't say who it is, but a recognizable actor and giving a great performance as this villain who is extremely calculated, a true sociopath, but a very non-presenting as just doing business as usual, but incredibly cold and calculating. And meanwhile, she goes and asks for help. But he's smart enough to basically frame her for the crime, or at least make her a suspect. So then she doesn't want to keep telling people because her friends think that she's losing her mind. The police think that she might be a suspect. So the more she tries to get help, the deeper she gets into this. So that in and of itself, I thought was really compelling watch, because you really want to root for this very flawed woman to get out of the situation. And you're like, why does she just tell somebody? It only makes it worse. So that is an interesting twist on the show. I
can't believe all of that happened in the first episode. I assume that I came in a couple of episodes into it.
Oh, no, this is the scene where the saw
bathtub scene. Yeah.
The bathtub scene is the end of episode 1. So you're only like 30 minutes in, but I think there are 4 episodes now. So, but they're like 30-minute episodes. So it's a pretty quick binge if you wanted to catch up. But anyway, all that is to say that if we want to see women having the screws put to them by a conniving sociopath, there's a lot. We got 2 things we could be talking about at the same time. So we can parallel who's doing the better job of who's the psychopath that wins that week. We could talk about. So anyway, so check it out, see if you catch up on that. Or even if you don't catch up all the way, if you want to we can discuss it here. And then we'll just kind of, maybe the 2 shows will wrap up around the same time and we can have a big conversation about both of them. And at 30, I mean, both of these shows, honestly, 30-minute commitment for maximum pleasure guaranteed, and like a 45-minute commitment for the Cape Fear. They're both very doable. So, not an hour and 20-minute. Euphoria's finale was over an hour and a half. And I don't know if that was really worth all that, to be honest.
But why is it called maximum pleasure guaranteed?
I honestly don't know.
Really? Okay.
I honestly don't know. I think I have a theory, but I mean, I guess I can say it here. I didn't want to spoil anything, but because it hasn't been revealed at all, I think that it appears that possibly these cam boys are actually, because we see somebody, this is like episode 2, so not a big spoiler, somebody's like watching recordings that he has made. So it seems like he is in some kind of corporate hierarchy where perhaps they're monitoring those. It makes you very paranoid about anybody who does these type of OnlyFans interactions, that someone's monitoring the interactions, perhaps to blackmail the people on the other side, like do facial recognition to identify who they are so that they can blackmail them or embarrass them into collecting money. And I have a feeling maybe that corporate name is Maximum Pleasure Guaranteed, but that has not been revealed on the show. That we just have hints of this. Like we see people in an office building in New York, and then they open up their camera, like they're just logging, like literally scanning their badges, and then they're watching Camboys. Gotcha. And then you're seeing the Camboy and the person on the other side. And then I'm like, oh, is this some kind of organized, like blackmail organization of some kind? So anyway, that's just speculation on my part, because literally we've seen collectively in 4 episodes, we've seen maybe 3 minutes with these people in this office building. But so that's a shoe that will drop at some later point. But at no point has anyone spoken those words on the show so far.
Yeah, I was a little confused about that from the portion I saw as to how the actual show connected to the title of the show.
All right, Sona, thank you. And check up on that and check in on it if you and your husband decide to keep watching it. And I'm enjoying it so far. I don't know if that's going to pay off either, but it is fun. And I do like, again, that I'm like, with episode 1, I'm like, I don't know, it's going to be the cliched thing. She's going to get herself deeper and never ask anyone for help. And then I'm like, oh my God, they actually are smart enough
for help.
It's smart enough to, like, she's asking her ex-husband. Her ex-husband's like, you're crazy. We got to take the child away from you. Like nothing is working out well for her when she asks for help. So I'm like, oh, they're very aware of this, which in and of itself made me appreciate the show more. So, all right, Sona, thanks again. And we will touch base on Sunday. On Friday.
Yes. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Okay.